Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about advanced keyword research for e-commerce. But this really applies to all niches, but we're going to use a lot of examples in e-commerce. So with keyword research or SERP analysis, there's a very important piece of it, which is about understanding entities. So we'll go deep into entity recognition, SERP analysis, all kinds of fun, nerdy stuff. Don't worry, we'll keep it simple, concise, and productive. So first off, it's very important to just kind of understand what Google is trying to do as a business or as a company. They're trying to give people what they're searching for. So their job is to understand what does the user actually want. So if you think about when you search on Google, you are looking for something. You're asking a question, you're searching for something, whatever that might be. You might be looking for a cafe near you. You might be looking for a doctor, you might be looking for a new pair of shoes. Whatever it might be, you're searching for something. And so you're asking Google, right, what is the best shoes? What are the best boots? Whatever it might be. So Google's job is really to understand what the user wants and then to give them that, or give them the best answer, the best thing, the most helpful answer. And that's what's going to keep them around and help them not to have competition that does a better job at that. That's kind of with AI is part of the disruption in there, is that for certain searches and questions, AI gives a better answer than what Google's previous system did. And that's why they're a little existential about that. So we have to really think about it from Google's perspective. All the engineers, the computer scientists and everything that are trying to give people what they want. That's their core job. Now, the systems to do that are very complex, but we can break it down in a simple way, and it involves something called an entity, which is really just understanding the world, what it is, and understanding how people search and what they're looking for. So before we even go into entities and everything, we touch on a very basic idea of search intent. So this is a way to understand what Google's goal is, and we want to see how do they actually figure out what that end user, that person or you really wants when you search something. And so they have a couple ways they can do this, but they've really kind of gone into broad sort of categories of search type. So if you search something like insulated work boots, they're going to be wanting to buy boots. They can tell that you want to buy boots. And so they have ads, they have popular product listings, they have a filter menu. So their system has identified the search intent as purchase or transactional search intent. They have different product listings here, very extensive. I'm in the US and they have a very extensive SERP features here. And then all the SERP results themselves are category pages that list out different products where you can directly purchase and so on. And so for e-commerce, Google actually has a store bot, and that's going through these and ensuring that they actually are e-com sites that a human can purchase from. And so that's one of the types of intents, which is transactional. Now, there are other cases, right? So if we do best golf shoes here, or even just, let's see if we can see, because a lot of times it's hard to know a search intent until you see a SERP. So best work boots, it's identified it as interesting. So it's still seeing it as mostly transactional. So you have collection pages here. It did add an AI overview, which is kind of like generally more informational, where it's pulling all these terms here, but it does have the products here. So it understands that the person is looking to buy a product more or less. And then it has collection pages here. But on some SERPs, there's all blog posts right here. And you see it does compensate that intent too, which is, Reddit post, somebody that's earlier on and is really just researching stuff. Now, this is amazing, right? Because Google is not as simple as just, is it a blog content? Is it informational or is it transactional, right? So if we go, I don't know, what is a boot? Let me change that to, what is a boot? Obviously, this is very informational. So it's bringing up dictionaries. Google understands blogs. It understands that the user is most likely just looking for information, blatant kind of information. But on something like best work boots, there's actually many intents that the user may have. So Google is not as simple as this is just a transactional or just an informational search intent. If you think about the human being researching best work boots, it's a mixed. So they may be ready to just buy, right? They just want to look at products. They want to look through products, but they may also have some questions. But these are kind of solidifying that I just want to look through products intent, which definitely some people searching this really just want to look at a list of products. Then you have YouTube, which is I really want, just a lot of information on different products in that way. So that's more informational, discovery based. And then you have actual Reddit posts, which are very informational. And so it's solving multiple intents at the same time. And so really at the end of the day, search intent is just about understanding the user and what they're wanting, and then understanding how Google is satisfying that so that you can rank your article or whatever it is. So like here, we can understand we can make a YouTube video, we could make a collection page with the list of our products, and we can also create a blog post or community post like Reddit for more informational queries. All of those would be roughly relevant. And they're even showing a local listing here. So they have some local detail too of like, hey, maybe they want to go into a shop to check out products. So they're giving the user as much data as possible. We also have these articles, so we could create a kind of similar article and YouTube video to pull into the AI. So we'd probably want to write like best work boots type article. So I think that gives you an example of just how sort of deep you can go into search intent. And so this is a great video by Ahrefs, a SAMO legend. So you can check that out too if you don't know. But typically the different search intents are essentially transactional. So the user is most likely looking for a purchase. Informational, so they're really just researching something. So maybe what you were doing just now, which is like keyword research or searcher intent, and you were looking up these keywords, that would typically be informational. So look at one of those, which is typically going to come up with an AI overview almost always now, and then a bunch of blog posts, and then some social stuff, YouTube videos, some of that kind of thing, sometimes images. So essentially all just helping you research. That's a very important one. And then you also have navigational. So let's say we just want to go to Nike. Then you're going to have the Nike website. You can have Nike website here. It's ecom, so you'll have some of their products. You'll have their locations, their social media profiles, all kinds of things like that. Or, maybe you just want to look up a show. You might search something like this, and then you have a search result for a whole knowledge panel here, which sometimes is bigger or smaller depending on thing. So really, search results are very dynamic, and they're just trying to answer the user. And so you really want to understand it. I mean, if you type down The Office here, we have this huge SERP features because this is the best thing for them, right? If you're trying to figure out if you want to watch The Office, or they don't even know what you want. You may want an overview, you may want the trailer, you may want ratings. Should I watch it? You may want to find out where to watch it. You may want to know the characters. Maybe, you're researching that. Watch show is probably going to be, where to watch it. They even have an episode guide here. Like Google gets very advanced, and it's getting more advanced every day in terms of answering search intent. So this all brings us into the concept of entities. How is Google doing this? How is it figuring out what is the different intents a user may have and how to best satisfy it? Well, The Office here is a perfect example. So when you search The Office, it has an understanding of an entity, which is The Office. The Office itself is a pretty broad keyword, right? So The Office, I mean, in reality, if you take out the whole cultural context that we're in right now, if somebody just says the word The Office, right? So I was at the office earlier today. That is super basic. It's literally just the definition of, an office. So that would be similar to this. It's a room, a set of rooms or buildings as a place to cover, XYZ. But obviously this is not in the instance of the being in front of the office. This is not the right information the user wants. When you add in The Office, it then is figuring out that you mean the show The Office. And it's using a lot of data points to understand this, but a key point is entities and understanding what the user is actually searching for and what they mean by their search queries. So it's trying to connect those things. So let's go back to the document. Really, entities are nouns. So there's specific, distinct things that are identifiable in the world. So it might be a brand, it might be a product, a person, or a place, or a TV show like The Office. And they give context to a search query. That's very important. A word, a search query just in of itself can mean tons of different things. It's very ambiguous. And so entities are the way Google tries to understand this and give the user what they want. And not only that, is they can also have attributes. So if you have an entity like iPhone 14, which is a product, you can have different attributes like a refurbished iPhone 14. And so, in that case, these are very different search queries. So you have iPhone 14, and then you have refurbished iPhone 14, both that have search volumes. A refurbished one is typically going to be ones that you buy aftermarket. And so you can see all of these have refurbished in the title because it's very important. It changes the entire thing that they're looking for. The entity itself of an iPhone 14 versus an refurbished iPhone, two very different things that the user is looking for. A refurbished is, of course, one that's used and then kind of fixed up to make sure that it's still working well. And so this is where this idea of the knowledge graph comes in. So the knowledge graph is essentially Google has all of these entities and they all have relationships to each other, right? So you might have the idea of refurbish, like you can refurbish something. So you can make something, old into new, and it then connects these different ideas. And so this is super important because you have attributes that will come into play as you do keyword research and you kind of understand these things. And we can see directly how it's connecting the different ideas together in a search query like The Office. So here we can see quite directly how it's connecting everything. So every character in The Office is its own entity. It's a person, place, or thing. And it's just combining all of these out. So if we look at Michael Scott, you can click on that. Michael Scott is an entity. And that has a relationship to The Office, right? Michael Scott also has a relationship to Steve Carell. So if we search Steve Carell, we can see how Google is directly creating its knowledge base of the entire world itself. It's essentially trying to map the world, the physical world, in a digital space. And so here we can see Steve Carell then connects to movies and shows, and that connects to The Office. And so we can directly see how all the entities and their relationships to each other really connect together. So this is a good way to understand how Google initially, maps onto the world to understand it. And it also consolidates entities. So when we're saying, there are multiple ambiguous terms like The Office, how does it know what you're talking about? And so oftentimes it uses data like users' engagement signals, all kinds of things. So now, enough of this high-level stuff. It is interesting, but we want to go to specific keywords that you might encounter when doing keyword research. So I'm going to take this example of insulated work boots. So right off the top, we can see if someone is searching this, Google thinks that they're looking to purchase a work boot that's insulated. And because we have a filter menu, we have Google shopping ads, we have Google sponsored listings, we have popular products listed here, people also buy from, and then collection pages. So if you open up any of these, they're going to be pages that list out products. Irish setter boot, they're all kind of just collection pages. So now we understand the intent here. So we know that there's multiple places we can rank. Popular products comes from the Google Merchant Center feed, so we can play around with that. And then if we wanted a page on our website to rank, then it would be a collection page that lists out products that you can directly review products, look at them, and purchase them, because that's what the user is looking to do. They also have a things to know, so we could write articles on these if we wanted to, and so on. So now we know the search intent here. But something even deeper we can look at is here we have a keyword insulated work boots. And we can see on the title tags for these collection pages, we have insulated work boots and shoes, men's work insulated working boots, men's insulated work boots, and so on. This, we can tell work boots is the entity, insulated is the actual attribute of that work boot. So we can start to understand sort of what the searcher is looking for, which is a work boot that's like good for winter. So synonym to that might be winter work boots. And this is another keyword with a good amount of search volume. But you'll see all kinds of ambiguous stuff in results like this, especially as Google tries to understand synonyms and what's relevant. So Google doesn't always do a great job of finding the core entity that people are looking for. But we see on winter work boots, most of the pages are saying insulated. So it kind of understands that a winter work boot and an insulated work boot is the same thing. So it tries to consolidate to sort of typically a single entity. And then, of course, results are always different every time you search them. So we can search in incognito and see how they all change. But you can see in this case, most of the pages say insulated. If you search this enough time, you'll find that winter work boots kind of consolidates to insulated work boots. So if we were going to create a page on this keyword, we'd want to focus insulated as the main term. Winter would be sort of a less important attribute. So the title, SEO title for the page would really be insulated work boots and not always winter work boots. Although there's some ambiguity there because on this result, winter work boots did win out for Wolverine. So, you got to search multiple times. We prefer to search in incognito so we can get Google not tracking us as much with user data signals. So you can go really deep into this SERP analysis stuff and kind of figuring out what Google wants. You can see what people are saying, a lot of article here that we can also rank for, and you can rank multiple things. But it's a good example of how you can kind of identify the main term, because if we drop any of these into SEMrush or a tool like that, so if we just grab this, we can see that there's, tons of different keywords that would be roughly relevant. So if we go into here and go to organic research, we can see that there's tons of keywords, 1,200 keywords. And what Google is doing is that it's consolidating these keywords to the core entities and trying to map them kind of itself. So we can see winter work boots and insulated work boots are synonyms very close together. But the one that you would probably want to put in your title tag is the insulated work boots, because even though it says insulated working boots, Google is ranking at #1 for winter work boots. And so it kind of understands that the core entity is insulated. You could kind of do both. But yeah, then there's tons of different things like freezer boots, right? So there's so many here. It's understanding that freezer boots is just another synonym for insulated. So this comes into the case of things like, do you need to create another page for freezer boots or just optimize your insulated working boots for freezer boots? So like thinking about how you separate out your pages and build out your website and rank things is going to be a lot included into understanding how Google, figures out what is what, which when it sees cold weather work boots, it consolidates that and understands that the core entity there is insulated. So if I search cold weather work boots, it's going to just connect me to the insulated work boots page or winter work boots page. And then sometimes it does crazy stuff like waterproof work boots just out of nowhere. So you do have to be Google will do all kinds of crazy stuff. So a lot of different specific situations you'll encounter. Here's another one, non-steel work boots. It means the same thing as soft toe work boots, but you can see Google is a little bit confused because it does have ones that say non-steel as well as ones that say soft toe. So it's actually unsure of the connection between the two to see non-steel toe boots, but a non-steel toe boot is the same thing as a soft toe boot. And because they're semantically quite a bit different, it's still a little bit confused on the primary entity there. Okay, so we went through a lot. I hope that was roughly useful. We can understand their primary entity and then the most relevant attribute, and we can kind of understand that by searching multiple synonyms and figuring out, Google mostly relates it to insulated rather than winter, or, XYZ rather than another thing. So that's really important for understanding sort of what the user is looking for and how Google understands the world to give them that. And, in that example, Google understands insulated as sort of the main word the main entity or attribute that people are looking for when they're saying, cold weather work boots or XYZ work boots. They're really just looking for insulated work boots. But it does get tripped up sometimes where it doesn't connect the entities properly, where it's, non-steel toe work boot, which is a synonym for soft toe work boot. Soft toe just means non-steel toe. And it still is not completely sure if those are separate entities, if they're the same entity, and so it will give a mixed result. And these kind of things happen all the time, and you have to make your best judgment. All of this goes throughout internal linking, out throughout your content. You want your correct content in all this stuff. So if you want this Google Doc, which really explains all of this in very detail, as well as various patents where Google goes deep into this, and you can upload those patents to GPT and ask questions about them, let me know in the comments and I'll drop them in there. So thank you so much for learning today, and I hope you have a great day.